right. Giving and receiving are one and the same. That's what A Course in Miracles says. So this past weekend, I went down to Lansing, and I drove like 3.5 hours, and then I did a little virtual book club online. It was kind of neat. And then I did the class, and then the next day I did the one-person show, and the next day I did, and the whole time I was like, I have enough energy. It's fine. I have enough energy. It's totally fine. Until I just didn't. And I got really depleted, and I started driving home from Lansing, and I was going by these mega churches, and all I heard in my head was, "You're not doing enough." And I was like, wow. And that is the story of Martha and Mary. So Martha and Mary is the story that we're looking at today from the Bible. And Martha is the voice in our head that says, "You're not doing enough." And when we talk about giving and receiving being one and the same, that's a concept from A Course in Miracles. And it says, like we were talking about last week, that everything we give out returns to us, and actually returns to us multiplied abundantly. And everything we give out into the world either benefits, blesses, or berates the world. And we get to decide what kind of world we want to live in by how we're investing our energy. So giving and receiving are one and the same. And when we're out of balance in the giving and the receiving, we can turn into a martyr, actually. And so it's an inside job. Too much giving and you're a martyr, and too much receiving and you become a black hole. And then we've all had those experiences where we just felt really needy, and it's kind of uncomfortable to sit on either side of the seesaw, isn't it? So when you're in balance with those two ideas, it's like living in the center of the infinity sign. And in that space of grace where you're effortlessly giving and receiving, it's the experience of a miracle worker. It's like you're not actually doing anything. It's that the energy of love is moving through you. So I wanted to share with you the story from the Bible. It goes, Jesus and his disciples were on their way, and he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparation that had to be made. And she came to Jesus and she said, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work?" I think that's so funny because I have 5 older sisters, and I was usually the Mary, They're like, Maureen, get to work. Anyway, so he said, isn't it bad that my sister's left me to do all the work? Tell her to help me. And so Jesus looks at Martha and he says, "Martha, Martha, you're worried about and upset about many things, but few of these things are needed, or only actually one. And Mary has actually chosen the one, and it will not be taken away from her." So in all good stories, we get to see ourselves in all of those roles, especially in the Bible stories. Like we literally are all, just like in dreams, like we're all of those characters. And we can sometimes see that we're like Martha, we're busy, we're doing, we're, getting things done. And then sometimes we're like Mary, we're hanging back and we're chill and we're just absorbing and experiencing. So, but the idea is that Jesus said, you worry too much. A lot of us worry too much. And when we worry too much, we're literally praying for what we don't want to have happen. So he's advising us, like, you don't need to worry. Course in Miracles, says we're either on one or two paths. We're either on the path of love or the path of fear. And when you're on the path of love, it does not birth forth worry. It just does. That's not something that can come from the path of love. That only comes from the path of fear. And at any given time, you can decide, or you can choose, am I in love here or am I in fear? And most of the time, you can decide, you can figure that out is, am I extending love out into the world and blessing everyone, or am I worried about what everyone's thinking of me? There's this interesting ideas that keep us in the box. And one is, what will they think of me? One is, what do I think of myself? Like, who am I to even do anything? And then on either side of that box are, don't move out of the box because this is good enough. So there's lots of agreements in society that keep us in the box. Course in Miracles says that love is the energy that gives birth to more love, more joy, more peace, more expansive. And it tells us that when we're in worry, if we don't wake up to it, worry can be very addictive. Like it becomes our normal setting. And you see people who go around the world like this where they're just worrying about everything. And it shows a certain degree of lack of faith. You know, we could have fearfulness or we could have faith. And you really can't walk in those two ideas can't stand in the same shoes. You either have one or the other. And you get to decide. And you might think, well, who am I to have that kind of impeccable faith? Well, who are you not to have it? Like, if not you, who? Because your worry is not serving anyone, certainly not serving your God. So worry causes us also to miss the present moment. In the story, you know, Martha has the Christ consciousness sitting in her living room, and she's in the kitchen banging pots together. It's like, what? We're missing the meat of the story here, you know? And when do we do that? You know, when do we prevent ourselves from actually experiencing the audacious moment of this present gorgeousness, and we're, you know, banging things together and busy, busy, busy. So the idea also is right timing. So how can we have right timing? It's not to say that we shouldn't be planning. Martha's stressed out because she takes the planning time and she pushes it into the receiving time. She hasn't made the jump. This morning we got here. Our tribe of Marthas came this morning at 7:45. Our board, we had Martha Dave and Martha Carol and Martha Melody showed up to do some planning for our community. We had our monthly board meeting. And we sat around and, what happened was actually that we arrived to this community hall where the other Marthas didn't show up because the place was a wreck. Dare I say, a shitstorm. And there was like food and liquor and stuff all over the place. And it was like, wow, somebody didn't show up to do the law here. So we took the time to clean it up, and then the next tribe of Marthas showed up. Letty and her team set up all these chairs, and set the altar, and the media Marthas set up their their equipment and did all of that. But now is the time to just receive. And how do we jump from the doing to the being? Well, the way that we do it here is through prayer. So that's a beautiful way to transition from one side of your mind to the other side of your mind, is to use prayer. If you're in too much doing, to literally say, God, help me to settle down and be still. If you're in too much lethargy, you say, God, help me to get some fire under my butt and move forward. Because prayer really helps us to transition and find that balance between those two sisters. So, so it was interesting that we came here to that. Knowing when to prepare and when to be still is an art form. And it's an art form that Martha hasn't figured out yet. Because she just keeps going with the doing. And in our society, we are almost pre-programmed for that. We've established this idea of multitasking so we can be everywhere present all the time, but nowhere actually present. We can just be busy all the time, but nowhere actually present. And so that inner Mary that knows how to lean back and just absorb is being, choked out by all of our busyness. So it's funny that, Martha says to Jesus, get her to work. And Jesus says she's picking the right thing right now. And not only that, but you do not ask somebody to come between sisters. I mean, that's just a wrong turn. So Jesus doesn't buy it. He says, she's picked the right thing, and let her be our teacher now. So if you're wondering where you're at on the seesaw of your Martha and Mary, you could ask yourself, is there any area in my life right now where I am trying to fix something or change something, or where I'm riding the surface of the details, where I'm avoiding in the details, where I'm avoiding the content? Where I'm doing all of this planning, and I never actually get down to just reaping the benefits of the content of that which I'm looking to experience. And if we're writing the details of our life, it's probably sometimes due to the fact that we don't want to actually experience intimacy. When Mary's kneeling at the knee of Jesus, she's invested in eye-to-eye intimacy. And that's a beautiful thing. It's nice that we do this here, We don't sit staring at the back of someone's head. We're looking at each other. You could look across the room and see your teacher there. Your teacher is all around you. So she's basically saying, Martha is basically saying, this is bad. It needs to be fixed. This is not what the optimal idea. And what John Mundy told us last week, which I thought was really interesting, he was saying that anything that is from the ego or from fear has a self-imploding device within it. So you can let that thing roll out and not have to worry or fix it. And how does that look? This is the principle. It says ego attacks and spirit does nothing. Isn't that interesting? So when you feel attacked, even by your own ego, as I did when I was driving here, like, you're not doing enough. I was like, okay, that's from my ego. And so instead of trying to figure it out, just do nothing. There was another time where, I felt attacked in a situation and I just did nothing. It's really agitating to the ego to do nothing, to not respond, to not defend, to just be still and to watch it unravel itself. It's incredible that it works. It really does work. That you can just, it's almost like you went to the mall with a little kid and the little kid is screaming and crying and you're trying to fix and play. I'll get you ice cream, I'll buy this, da, da, da. And nothing works until you just step back and just let it melt. Just let that melt down to nothing. A kid is not going to be able to carry on that kind of energy. It will burn itself out. And that's the same thing with the ego. The ego will burn itself off. And sometimes people just need to kick and scream and cry and snot. And is it okay for us to hold space for that without trying to fix it? That's a good question. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to do anything. It means we're going to move in right action. We're going to ask the Holy Spirit, what would you have us do? Where would you have us go? What would you have us say? Always. And a lot of times the Holy Spirit will give us such menial jobs, like go make your bed, go clean your desk, go call your mom, And we're like, what do you mean? Like, I got to move mountains. And the Holy Spirit's like, no, you don't got to move mountains. You got to just go write that thank you note, and I'm going to move the mountains. It's amazing how much God wants to do for us, but we elbow God out with our own ego, just trying to keep busy. So our lives could be way more effortless than we're sometimes allowing ourselves to live. Mary lives, this idea of this relaxed, joyful, receptive energy lives in all of us. And this is the one that drops everything to be present. And this is the one that's capable of impeccable listening. And Martha is not all that bad either. Martha gets the job done, as Mary gives us the permission to enjoy. So both of those ideas could be present. So here, when we talk about prayer, it wouldn't be helpful if I showed up here and said to the team, let's just pray and see what happens. We'd be sitting in a dirty room right now, But what we say is we do a prayer treatment, and then we move our feet. So we treat and then move our feet. So we engage both of those aspects of ourselves. But what comes first? The prayer. The prayer comes first. So, and before we even started the meeting, we started in prayer. In regards to action, Mahatma Gandhi says, it's the action, not the fruit of the action, that's important. And I've said this before, when we're creating art, we think that it's the song that we bring back or the painting that we bring back to share with the community that's the most important thing, but it's not. The most important thing is that we go to the divine and dance with the divine and have that experience of Holy Communion. And then anything that gets birthed from that is gorgeous. And we get to bring that back as almost a souvenir that says, look, I went to God and look what I made. But Mahatma Gandhi said it's not the fruit of the labor. It's the experience of moving one foot at a time, one dance step at a time with God. Wouldn't it be interesting to allow yourself to experience to dance with God? He actually says, you have to do the right thing. It may not be in your power. It may not even show up in your time that there will be any fruit, but that doesn't mean you stop doing the right thing. You may never know the results that come from your actions, but if you do nothing, there will be no results. So when Erin came here to talk today about that beds, she might never see the idea of eradicating homelessness from our communities. That would be the optimal idea, but still that doesn't require that we don't take the steps to go, as Carol did, to the estate sale and buy some gently used sheets and bring them and deliver them, or we don't show up and we don't listen and we don't do our bit and our part, because it's the journey that joins us all together. So there needs to be action, but it's best if it's right action. We could keep ourselves very busy in unproductive actions, and you might want to look at that this week. You know, last night I was like working on my talk, and then I got on Facebook. And I knew, I was looking at the clock. I'm like, oh, but I kind of just need to unwind with watching this. I don't even know what I was watching. It was not important at all. And it was unproductive, you know what I mean? I think sleep would have been more productive for me. So we all live there, you know, we all live with that little like junk candy stuff that we feed ourselves with. And it's totally forgivable. But, you know, we could say, let me just try and be even more impeccable with the energy that I'm exerting, because I really want my energy to be used for holy endeavors. You know, and you know when you're not involved in holy endeavors. You know how you know? Because it will cause a spiritual hangover. You'll feel a bit sick about how you just spent that time. And so if you don't want to feel that, you got to take right action. So one way we can help with that discernment is slowing down, going at the pace of peace, asking consistently, is this for our highest good? To have the balance between Mary and Martha. They represent love and law. And if you haven't heard of that before, we talk about it often here. Love and law is the two sides of the same coin. And law is all about the structure, the logic, you know, the figuring out, the planning. And law is the teacher also of action and creativity. And it's the structure that needs to hold everything together so that the love within the container can flow and feel safe. The law shows up and sets up the chairs and folds the programs and lights the candles so that we can make a space for the divine to enter. And then the love is more about that release, that fluidity, that flow, and so the two of them work really well together. You know, the two of them most of the time you could look at a person's life and you could say, you're leaning too far into law, the logic, you're overthinking this, you're overplanning it, you're never moving into, the letting go. Or you could see somebody who's really into the love of their life and they don't get anything done because there's no law to it. I remember when I moved here from California, actually, that I found the Midwest to be very logistic, and there was like a law people followed, like you did this and then you did this and then you did this, and you know, even with like, you know, I remember somebody told me how to park. I was like, really? Like there's rules to everything, huh? And I thought they could use a little bit more fluidity here. And then out in California, there's so much fluidity, and they certainly could use a little bit more law there. So you can see how that looks in a community when there's an imbalance. So marrying those two together would really cause all of us to be more of a hot knife through butter. Without law, nothing gets done. Without love, we become puddles on the floor. It's just as the intellect needs the intuition, the intuition, which usually exists in your gut, needs the intellect, and they need to work together. And when we marry those things together, they meet in our heart, so we can move forward in a full-hearted way. And these two sisters can work together and bring out the best in each other. You know, really bring out the best in each other. The reverence and the surrender and the presence of Mary, and the action and the attention to detail of Martha, so that they can enjoy the experience. They can both be in joy. When I first started opening up a church, I remember I went to the community, and it was even smaller than this, and it was over at the old church. And I asked the community, like, "What do you want?" And they said, "We want name tags." Great, you know, got name tags. We want happy hour, like, you know. We want to serve wine, actually, was one that I was like, okay, great, the Catholics do it, why not? So so for a little while we had that. And then this little girl got up and she said, "I want you to teach from the Bible." And I was like, okay, time to close this meeting. Because I had a fear that if I picked up the Bible, my fingers would fall off, because I was a sinner. Anyhow, when I first fell upon this story, it was one of the first times that I decided to step into teaching from the Bible. And Will told me at that day, I said, Will, what do you think the talk title should be? And he said it should be Enjoy the Ride. And so this was a story that I got out of the Bible about how to really enjoy the ride. And we as a community have been enjoying the ride together. And we've been through a lot of different phases and different forms. And after the experience this morning with that, with the way that we were greeted in this space, I got a real clear knowing that we weren't long here, and that the board happened to join in the conversation, and we decided that we're going to look for a new space. And that it will have all the attributes of this space, but it will also have air conditioning. It'll have a place to store our stuff. And when I was down in Lansing, I went to a church, and this woman who's the minister came up to me, and we had such a great connection. And she took me into her sanctuary, which was about the size of this room, and she said, we only use this room on Sundays, and it's such a waste of space. And then further on in the day, I went to a theater, and I saw this couple who had opened a theater. And they were like, yeah, we don't really use this space on Sundays. And I was like, I'm like, we need a little theater, a little storefront where we can put a stage in and we can do meditation, where we can do the things throughout the week. So I'm clear about that. I'm ready for our community to move into our own space, so we don't spend all of this exerted extra energy in setting up chairs every day and not really feeling at home in our space. Like, I think we're deserving of that. So we're putting the team back together, putting the group back together for the new home, and we're going to be moving into that conversation, but that's a conversation that all of us are ambassadors for, and I feel like it's going to be wonderful. I feel like it's going to be a nice growth spurt for us. So I'm grateful that I get to share that with you this morning, and I'm looking forward to having the conversation on what your thoughts are, your feelings are in regards to activating your Martha and your Mary and moving into creating a space for the divine to come and visit us. And that's the word.